Good evening. This is the Cleveland Heights Council Finance Committee. Got quite a few people here this evening, so make sure I don't miss anybody. First of all, we have a roll call for this committee. I'm Gail Larson, the chair. Vice chair is Anthony Maddox Jr.
Here.
And member is Jim Posh.
Here.
Also attending is Council President Kuda, Councilor Jim Petrus, Council Member Craig Cobb. We have Director Hairston with us, and he has Vershawn Caldwell. Did I? Yeah.
Yes.
And April Harrison, who will be introduced in a moment. Mayor Sarin has joined us, and Ryan Prosser from IT is here.
Yes.
Okay, all right.
True.
More the merrier. All right. So we are going to go through the agenda as published on the city's website. But since Director Harrison has all the documents for that, most of that agenda, I'm going to give the table over to you and also to introduce April.
All right. So I'd like to introduce the newest member of my team. And that's April Harrison, or the Human Resources Organizational Performance Manager. And just to give you a little background on April, she's a native Clevelander and completed her undergraduate studies at the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor, Michigan. She returned back to Ohio and completed her master's degree in public administration at Cleveland State University. She spent the first 10 years of her career working for a nonprofit, Vocational Guidance Services in Cleveland. She then transitioned to the city of Cleveland, where she spent the next 15 years working in payroll as an administrator and also working in strategic planning with the Cleveland Airport System. She then relocated to the Washington, D.C. area and spent the next few years working for the American Association of Airport Executives, AAAE. April's going to be working on a number of strategic projects for both the human resources area and the finance area. So, welcome.
Absolutely, welcome. I'm glad you're gonna hang out with us this evening.
I'm going to move on to item number 2, review of financial statements April, May, and second quarter, items A, B, and C. And when we met back in March, this report right here was the item that I circulated to all the council members, which was my plan this evening. However, last night at 3 o'clock in the morning, as myself and Mr. Phelps were working on this report, we could not get it to balance the way it needed to balance. So I am going to need a 1-week extension in order to submit this report to council members. I made a judgment call, and I felt that the quality was not there to submit this report to council members. So I felt it would be best to ask for an extension and submit it in 1 week.
I'm okay with that.
Absolutely.
Committee's okay with that?
Well, we're making some decisions pretty quickly about some funding issues that are sort of out of budget. Well, okay, if you need another week, you need another week. That's fine, but will we have the information in a week, or would it be delivered in our next finance committee meeting? When they get scheduled?
I would like to get this information to you. We did all we could to try to get it to you this evening because it's very important. There's a lot of information in here that ties into decision making. And at 4 o'clock this afternoon, I decided that I was going to ask for an extension. But I don't think 1 week will turn into 2. I think probably by this weekend or by Monday, we'll have this report to you in this format. The last time I submitted this report, we had a variance of $202. The variances this afternoon were significant. They were material. And therefore, I felt that the report didn't have the level of quality that it needed in order to submit it to council. So I made a judgment call to ask for an extension.
I did email Director Hairston this morning the questions we had from last night's meeting regarding Park Synagogue funding and also the funding for the street construction projects that we authorized last night to come out of General Fund 101. Are you able to answer those questions this evening?
I believe so. I believe I can speak in regards to the balances in the general fund.
Okay,
Actually, Madam Chair, before we move on, can I ask the director to give maybe just a bit more information about the variances, not what the specific variances are here and what the cause is, but what types of things can lead to the type of variance that you saw?
Well,
Just so people have a better understanding of how this happens.
Yeah, so this report right here is very complex and labor intensive. Basically, you go into New World and you download a flat file of information. And then there's a series of macros and links and formulas that are used in Microsoft Excel to populate this report. And once one thing gets off, it causes a lot of erratic behavior in this report, which causes variances. And so it's a labor-intensive, difficult report. We call it the UNETIC report. But it's got a lot. Once you get it in its final format, it has a lot of good consolidated information. So you can very quickly see how your revenue is doing versus your expenses, your unencumbered balances, and all of your fund performance. So it's a very useful report. It's just very labor intensive. And it's very sensitive in terms of the way it is constructed. Ideally, a financial system where you just click a button and it produces this report would be ideal. But when this report was constructed years ago, we didn't have that capability, which makes it labor intensive and manual.
is it possible the $202 variance with all of the other columns at zeros was an outlier as well, that maybe something changed on an algorithm or while it was being calculated? Because that looked odd to me from March 30th report.
When we looked at this prior to me presenting it to council, I was impressed with the $200 variance. When you're looking at over $100 million worth of financials, and you've got it seemed extremely minimal. So I was satisfied with that. Now to have all zeros is noteworthy, but I was satisfied bringing a $200 variance to council. When I looked at the variances, which were in the millions, this afternoon, I felt like that the report lacked the quality that it needed in order to present it to council. So I made a judgment call and I said, I'm going to ask for an extension.
And one more, just for clarification, what does this particular report and the fact that it is not ready for prime time mean about your larger global understanding of the city's finances in this moment?
Well, I feel very confident to speak towards our finances. I think we are extremely healthy, very liquid, with very little debt. So I'm very, very, very satisfied with the financial position of the city of Cleveland Heights right now.
I just wanted to make sure that like this, being ready doesn't necessarily mean you don't have relevant, reliable information to share.
So what I'm trying to tease out is we have our budget from the budget for this year. I was gonna say we came up with it last year, no, but we came up with it this year. So we have our budget for this year. And so how is that tracking? We know we've got a significant number of open positions. And things that looks like opened up but were never filled. The way I'm trying to rationalize some of these additional expenses is if we have additional monies we didn't spend, can we apply those to sort of some of these things that are coming to us that have been budgeted?
So looking at the numbers from last night, and again, there were some significant variances, but my analysis of just looking at it is that revenue right now is outpacing expense. But that doesn't include encumbrances, but revenue is outpacing expense
As of which date?
as of 6:30.
All right, thank you.
The fact that we've been running most of this year with 30+ openings. Reduces expense significantly. And my assumption is if we continue to trend the later half of this year, we will probably end the year with revenue, outpacing expense, which will add to our current balance. I looked at our current balance before coming to this meeting right now, which is about $110 million. So it would add to that, and that's how the year would end. If we continue to trend the way we've trended the second half, the way we trended in the first half.
In
Well,
context, is that 110 a lot, a little, normal?
For a city this size, I would say it's outstanding.
What was the projection before we got the real number of 100? I mean, I know you have a projection of 110 million, but what was it projected to be before that?
Well, revenue was budgeted at around 100 million. Expenses plus capital was budgeted around 105 million. So we were looking to deplete, about 5 million from our cash balance. But right now, I don't think expense is going to hit that 105.
I see.
I think it's going to come in less than that because we've been running with 30+ job openings.
so what I'm trying to figure out is you can't answer this now. You need the report in order to get this, but 6 months into the year, this is a report that ends in
June 30th.
Yeah, it's 2 quarters. Where are we? So if we knew we would have a certain amount of revenue, a certain amount of expense this time for our budget that ends in the end of June, are we 5 million ahead? Are we 4 million ahead? I mean, we'll be ahead somewhere because we have these 30 positions. I mean, maybe it's easy, you could just do an average of what those 30 positions are and come up with that. But there's other things that I guess I can't assume. I'm trying to get an idea of, I'm just telling you the purpose, my purpose for this money, and hopefully other council, and how other council members would actually use it. But we've got these unbudgeted items. Really, how much wiggle room do we have without, I guess, to be the same place where we would be at the end of this year if we were able to take, let's say, another 2 million for a project, or another 500,000 in various things between a Noble Merchant Association and a possible immigrant lawyer pay for project that is likely going to come our way. And also we've got Shaker Lakes floating out there. I mean, we're likely going to have to put additional money into Lower Lake, or at least it's probably something's going to have to happen with that.
Well, I think a lot of reliance is placed on this report, and I don't want to speculate. I think it would be best to produce this report. I think we can do it within the next several days. I can get it out to all the council members. We can possibly set up a future meeting, whether it be a Zoom call or a conference call, just to talk about the information that's going to be in the report. But the numbers that I saw last night, I didn't have a lot of confidence in those numbers. And because you're making critical decisions, I thought it would be best to get you the highest quality report.
So, Chairwoman, can we have the opportunity to look at this in about a week and leave the door open if we feel like we might need to have another meeting?
We can do that. Yeah, we can do that.
If I could, Director Harrison, you mentioned 110 million. Looking through the packet, I see that the bank balance is some about 110 million. Was that what you were referring to?
Today.
Okay.
If you look at your bank recs in that report, it should be around 104. That was as of June 30th. That 110 million is as of
So we
August
were referring
19th.
to the bank balance.
Yes.
Okay.
So I want to get back to my original question about what was discussed last night at council. Mayor Sarin, is it all right if we figure out what to do with that funding? Because we have the pressure of the Park Synagogue project as well as I really wanna understand why we need to use 101, Fund 101 for the street construction we passed last night, so the funds that I asked you about, Director Hairston, were $1,250,000 for a loan to Park Synagogue and $750,000 for a grant, total of $2 million.
Mhm.
Probably looking at the General Fund 101 for that, the unencumbered balance. Is that something you could certify as funds that we could use for that particular project?
Yes, I do think that the general fund could be a resource for that project. On June 30th, the general fund had a balance of almost $37 million. The report that I ran today for August is showing the general fund with an ending balance of about 31 million.
Well, that's a substantial difference.
In terms of the drop from 36 to 31.
Yeah.
I mean, that may very well be based on timing of revenues, half year.
Seasonality.
I mean, but, you know, I think either way, what we're expecting, or what we were expecting at the end of the year, in the general fund, the projected ending balance at the beginning of the year, was 28 million, or 28.4. But we're still expecting revenue, we're still expecting expenses for the rest of the year, so we'll have to rolling target that.
Are there any funds that you're concerned about that will go negative by year end, so we would need to use General Fund 101 to, like we did it this past year, and we've done it in years past for that year end transfer transaction? Is there anything out there that is substantial as material? Or either one of you?
I don't have any specific funds that I'm concerned about right now. You might have more information about that, but I fully anticipate at the end of the year that there will be some rebalancing that needs to take place. That's basically an every year thing.
Projecting about $2 million of unspent money in public works, for salaries and benefits. I'm projecting about $1 million in police in unspent funds for salaries and benefits.
So can we safely say that you will certify that there is $2 million available for Park Synagogue project as a fiscal officer?
Yes.
Okay, all right, go ahead.
Any projected budget adjustments coming down the road that,
The police department has asked for a $300,000 budget adjustment for a number of different initiatives that they're trying to do, upfitting vehicles. There's just a number of things that, so we met with Chief Britton and Officer Sean a couple weeks ago, and we went through 3 pages of initiatives that they have, and I did a total on it. It came at $305,000. So that will probably be on the next council agenda, that budget adjustment.
And to keep moving the agenda along, the project or the transaction we did last night was $585,710 for change orders that were relevant to street construction. And I looked at the Fund 201 unencumbered balance as of March 31. If these figures are correct, that was $4,844,000, and this June 30 report says that the balance in Fund 201 is $5,554,117. So as the fiscal officer, would it be acceptable for us to ask that what we took last night out of Fund 101 could be reimbursed by Fund 201 because these were street construction projects?
Yes, I mean, that's very doable.
I think the final legislation that came forward was a result of maybe a bit of a miscommunication between Public Works and Finance. I think Public Works expected that would
Yes.
come out of 201.
Yes.
So just righting that ship is appropriate.
How do we make that sure that that transaction happens?
And that could just be a budget transfer at the next council meeting. It could be at the 25th meeting. if you
Okay.
want.
All right, thank you. All right, everybody okay?
Director Hairston, do you happen to have an approximate unencumbered balance across all the funds? Or would that be in the report that you're hoping to get us in about a week?
That will be in the report that I'm going to submit within a week.
Okay, great, thank you.
I could try to do a cross-fund report real quick. It wouldn't exactly tie, but it might be in the neighborhood.
So I think we have to be careful. So we certainly have a surplus of resources where you could get 2 million out of that, or probably a lot more than that. But it just means you have 2 million less next year.
Right.
I think we really need to look at what that 2 million, it's kind of coming out of nowhere. We have to really make sure that, at least I don't want to, in my opinion, I don't want to take anything out of our savings, call it savings, okay? That's going to make us 2 million behind if we get into next year. If we can fund this out of budget savings, because of the fewer employees we have.
Maybe what you can do as you go through that report you're preparing for us tonight or for the next few days is look at those accounts that could be relevant for Park Synagogue, anything that applies to economic development or anything like that as you're looking through building that report. Is that acceptable for now?
Yeah, it is. There's also one other thing that sort of is, a couple other bigger expenses is we've had a lot of payroll increases. And it was our assumption that was built into the budget. There was some, I don't remember what number we decided to put in for the Public Works employees. I don't think we factored in the 16% raise, which is what they got. Fairly negotiated by all the parties. But that's going to be a significant increase of monies that was not expected. So I think we're going to have to, I think that's why it's really important to look at these funds. I'm not trying to creep into other items you have on your agenda, but there's also the distribution of the Archer raises and cost of living raises, and I believe those are retroactive. I have heard that the Public Works employees did get their raises, and I believe while they're retroactive, I believe they were effective as of some date. So that's gonna be, these are gonna be big ticket items. That's gonna show up on this report. Well, actually, maybe it's not. It's not gonna show up on this report.
Third quarter.
But a projection could be made.
Certainly a projection can be made. That's gonna complicate things.
Can we get that number for, as you produce this report, can we get something that will help us look at this report for third quarter and what the effect is of the Archer study and the union contract retroactive and going forward to the end of year?
I think we could definitely forecast our salary exposure.
Chairwoman Craig has been.
Yeah. Thanks, and I'll just speak for myself. I need to see a report that is telling us where we are to date and where you expect us to end the year. That's the only way that we'll have any confidence, I feel, that we can spend money that's been asked for us. Are you going to be able to produce a report that would then also allow us to question why we have significant variances up or down in these various accounts?
I mean, I definitely think that we can take a look at the first 6 months of this year, which is history, and then also look at the future 6 months of this year, which would be our forecast. We'll call it a 6+6, and that essentially is going to give you your year-end projection.
Because I can appreciate what you're telling us orally, but I think all of us trust what we see on a paper document.
Vice Chair.
And I agree, and I think that document should be of the highest quality if you're gonna make financial decisions based on that information, which is why I chose to postpone submittal of that document, because if you're gonna make significant financial decisions, that document should be of the highest quality.
And the document that you were unable to produce goes through the end of June 30th.
Yes, the first 6 months of this year.
Not to give you a hard time, why didn't we make an attempt to run that report earlier, since we're closing it out on June 30th?
Because in order to run that report, all the financial information has to be in the accounting system for the first 6 months of the year. And all of that information was not, all the transactions had not been posted within the accounting system, so the data would have been incomplete. We completed all of our postings, I think Tuesday of last week, and this is for June. Most organizations that I've served in the past, we typically close the books within the first 10 business days of the following month. So, for example, just using Cleveland Airport as an example. On July 10th, we would have been closed. We closed out June last week in August. So, a lot of things have happened throughout this year, but we're working towards getting to a point where we're doing a timely close. That's one of my goals for this department, but we're not there yet.
When do you expect to be able to get there? What do you need from Consol, if anything, that will enable you to get there?
So we need a couple of things. One is additional manpower, and I've addressed that. So I think that's in place. A better financial system would definitely help. So Ryan Prosser is here, and he's identified some solutions. We met some folks from the city of Euclid, and they use the same financial system as the folks at the city of Independence, which is where Ryan came from. This system is widely used in the state of Ohio. It's called VIP. We're gonna actually do a field trip over to the city of Euclid to view a demo, but we need a robust system, a 2025 system that can produce results for us quickly, timely, accurately, and we don't have that. And they, when we met with these folks a couple weeks ago from the city of Euclid, I mean, they told us they used to be on Use New World, which is what we currently use, and it was laughable to them that we were still using it. But we struggle with this New World system daily, and we look forward to having a system that is more accurate, is more up to date, and can give results without all the labor intensity.
New World has been problematic for a very, very long time. This is, I think, one of the major organizational cultural concerns that we've had to address. People got so used to dealing with operating at a handicap, basically, attempting to work around and being refused the idea that they could possibly get a new system. And so they developed all of these relatively labor-intensive processes in order to provide council with the information in the way that they wanted to see it, instead of going back and trying to find a new way to do it that would be less labor-intensive. We saw the same thing back when they were manually transcribing council meetings. For the minutes, it's absolutely insane what they decided to do. But it sort of created this pattern of behavior that led to people not even asking for improvements in the systems that we're using. To the point where we had an audit finding about our asset management system because it crashed and nobody told anyone. And so this is the sort of thing that I think is important to, in a continuous improvement effort, this will be something extremely important for this organization to pursue.
I would like to move on with the agenda because we are talking about asking for new.
Thank you.
I got you. New software. I would ask of you, as you're looking at VIP, I want them to have the report writing application that makes this obsolete. This is not right for them to have to spend hours putting together a report that's meaningful for financials. And anything else that you can do to help them be more efficient, especially since you've had experience with New World and with VIP.
Right. Yeah, I agree. I think that our approach to choosing a new system would be working from those deliverables or the lack of deliverables that we have.
Right.
And, mentioning these challenges that we're bringing up in these meetings. And this is really crucial to operating the city from administrative and legislative side.
So were we looking at possibly a proposal for 2026 or earlier in the budget, asking for funding, making a decision? Where are you at?
Well, things are kind of up in the air for me, so I don't know. But I think what I would prefer to do is do the work now to try to have a reliable estimate for what we would anticipate putting into a new system financially in order to, incorporate it. And have that in the 2026 budget. If I'm, if I am allowed to pursue the transition that I hope to with the next mayor, that would be something that I would want to bring them in once there's a mayor-elect to have more of a conversation about that as well. But just as a callback, these same issues with New World that we're constantly experiencing and experiencing now are part of the reason why we had such a tumultuous and difficult time desperately working labor-intensive to get council information about the 2025 budget and why things were taking so long when Mr. Feltz and then when Director Hairston came on, trying to get some of that stuff out to you guys. It's very difficult.
Vice Chair Maddox,
Sorry, that's bad.
you okay?
Yeah, we kind of moved off from that topic. I had some questions after Councilman
No,
Cobb.
go ahead.
It's fine. We can move on to the next topic.
Okay. So we have the packet, everybody's got a copy of it. And the next item is posting of the fourth quarter financial report to the city website. So I know that's been cumbersome for you. Have you been able to get help from IT to get that done or from Steve or?
Mr. Barker is the person who primarily has most universal access to the website for posting those sorts of documents. Those just need to go to Mr. Barker in order to have it posted.
Because that would give us a complete look at 2024. So I'd like to see an update on that if we can. Is there anything in the packet, because I would like to move on to the status of the 2023 submitted state audit. Anybody have any questions so far on everything that we got from Director Hairston?
Well, just because Director Prosser's in the room, could I ask about the posting of contracts? Or is that just too far off the?
Gosh,
Okay.
can you ask him in a different?
Yeah.
There's just so much. I still have a report that we're waiting on for that Vice Chair Maddox has prepared for months and I really want to get through the financial stuff. Okay, all right. So status, you gave us a summary of that in this packet. Anybody have any questions on the status of the 2023 audit?
I did have a few words.
Were we gonna hear some words or
I don't see any questions on the board.
Just a couple items. We had a meeting a couple weeks ago with Scott Reeves, our CPA from Sean Hurd and Associates. And the feedback that he gave myself and Assistant Director Caldwell, he said that both of you have made great strides in completing these audits. Assistant Director Caldwell is doing simultaneous audits, both 23 and 24. And I just wanted to give her an opportunity to just talk a little bit about where we are with 2023 as well as 2024.
All right, perfect. Good evening, everyone.
Hi.
So I'll be providing, as Director Harrison mentioned, an update on the 2023 audit as well as the 2024 financial statements and audit. So to provide a little background, at the top of 24, the last period for which financials were available was December 31st, 2022. Both the 2023 and 2024 financial statements and audits were outstanding. When I came on board in April, due to some tremendous work by Director Harrison and former interim finance director Willie Phelps, we had made significant strides getting brought up to date with submitting our 2023 financials. There was one item pending which was quickly turned around, and those financials were filed on May 12th. Over the next 2 months, the auditors took some time to review that information in order to proceed with testing. On July 10th, a 2-page audit request for the 2023 audit was received from Zupka and Associates. The list covered requests for capital assets, payroll payables, pending litigation updates, as well as the CFO, which is the schedule of expenditures of federal board. Since I was relatively new to the city, one of the first things that I had to do was identify the appropriate responsible areas for those requests. After that was outlined, I began sending out the requests to the various departments. Between July 10th and today, all but 2 items have been submitted to the auditors. So we have 2 items that are outstanding. That's the pending litigation request as well as the CFA, which I'm working on the latter, and we hope to have that turned around by the end of the week. Due to the fact that the 2023 audit and the 2024 financials were running parallel, there was the possibility that there could be an impact from 23 to 24. Material discrepancies were required restatements, which would add to the timeline. On the flip side, if there were no material discrepancies, that would maintain the timeline, as Scott Reeves, who has been helping us with the gap conversion, would be able to roll over to the 2023 figures to 2024. We did receive good news yesterday from Scott. He spoke with Zupka, and they indicated there are currently no audit adjustments required for the 2023 audit. So that means he can take his figures, roll them over, and update them for 2024.
Take that.
Yeah. To conclude and provide just a high-level summary of where we are, currently we're about 98% complete with the 2023 audit from our standpoint, 50% complete with providing data to Scott Reeves for the gap conversion. And if there are no hiccups, we can expect to, and Scott did indicate this, that we can expect to have the financials turned around by September 30th. Typically, there's a 3-month timeline in terms of the audit, so hopefully we'll have our audit complete for 24 by December 31st. Any questions?
That's a timeline. Thank you.
Yeah.
Are they sharing any findings with you?
They have not shared any findings with us. I know when I looked at the last report, there were findings for, as the mayor mentioned, capital assets. I think we had CBS come out and do an appraisal. So I think that brought us up to speed for 2023. And that was from 2022 that we had that finding. And so I think we should have that squared away for 2023, but to date, we have not received any findings from the auditors.
Can you ask?
Yeah.
If there's gonna be any findings? Because I think we probably wanna find those out sooner than later.
Okay.
sometimes you get to negotiate what those are before they actually come out.
I wanted to, this is just sort of additional information that I found it interesting. I reached out to the Auditor of State's office, the chief auditor for our region, just with sort of a question, curiosity in a way. I asked what other cities have 23 audits that are outstanding. And he sent me I didn't expect this many, but he sent me a list of 23 or earlier audits that are outstanding at this point in the 6-county region that he manages. And so we're looking at the Bedford Heights 2023 audit, us, of course, 2023. East Cleveland is looking at outstanding 21, 22, and 23. Garfield Heights is looking at 22 and 23 outstanding. Lorraine is looking at 2023. Parma Heights 2023 and Richmond Heights 2023. It's not a club we want to be in. It's never a club we want to be in. But I did want to assure the council that concerns about us being unauditable, deemed unauditable, or getting fines for this are, I don't want to speak for the auditor, but given what they've told me, unlikely to the point of impossibility at this point. So I don't think that it's something for us to be worried about. If anybody is worried about that, I don't know if you are, but I know some people have mentioned it. So I wanted to make sure that people understood we are in no danger of being unauditable or deemed unauditable. And we are not in any danger of getting fines for these being outstanding to this point. I just wanted to let you know.
So I know one of the things that the state auditor does in their reports is they kind of criticize the systems that we're using, you know. And I'm just wondering if our software, just having this software is just automatically puts you on some list. I mean, it just sounds bad when you describe it. I don't really know exactly what you're talking about, but I understand like the idea of you having to jump through so many hoops to get a report together. Sounds like they're gonna, you know, like it's likely they'll say, you know, maybe you guys need another system, right?
They seem to focus more on financial controls, separation of duties, and then the health of your balance sheet, versus the way you
Software
kind of
programs.
the way you put it all together.
Yeah, okay.
So as long as you're producing good financial
That's true.
information, they don't care
Okay.
too much how you get there.
Let's see.
So, yeah, I think, Mayor, you're absolutely correct. The community's concerned. I personally am concerned. I get the sense my peers are concerned. It's somewhat reassuring to hear your words. It's disappointing, though, we have members of the public that are coming up and telling us during public comment that, you know, they feel like we need to have a forensic audit for 2024. I think that's a little too premature. And it seems like they're all talking about Kane Park. Do we have separate financial statements at Kane Park? Are there any financial issues that we should be aware of about Kane Park?
Well, just from my perspective, before we get to sort of the financial work, one of my goals when I started as mayor was to professionalize Kane Park. I saw a couple different problems at Kane Park that were no fault of the people working there, or at least not the ultimate cause of the issues, in my view, was a lack of support from the administration over decades for Kane Park. It was almost as though Kane Park was some separate entity, and we didn't treat it as though it was a function of this government, which it is. It's not even, like we've discussed before, it's not an enterprise fund, it's not a business-like type activity. And so we should treat it like it is a function of the government because we've decided it's a priority to have Kane Park for a very long time. And so, but it was it felt like, and maybe this is a good thing for some people's, experience of working in the place. But when I went there, it felt almost like summer camp. And I don't want to diminish the valuable and good work that they do. I'm just talking about sort of the feeling of it. And that can be a good thing, that can be a welcoming thing, but it also means that you see reflected in some of the behaviors and the processes, the same thing you see reflected in the fact that we had extension cords running to power strips, running to another extension cord, running to a wall unit air conditioner, instead of investing in the administration building over there or the dressing rooms and actually building them out in a way that it can be useful. And those sorts of deprofessionalized processes are problematic. We saw it with hiring, we saw it with the switch from hiring employees to 1099 workers and how that was probably not done appropriately, not done properly. It was done with good intention, but probably not in the proper way. And so trying to correct those things, I think we've made great strides. I think going cashless is a really good idea, making sure that people are trained in whether or not government employees are allowed to take tips, those sorts of things. Holding people accountable for the quality of their work over there and how much effort they're putting in is also something that, with a few hiccups, we've been able to achieve a little bit better. I think that at Kane, morale is high. People are doing great work. They're working together as a team. And we've also professionalized the organization, both in terms of the actual facilities and the talent that we've brought in to work there. So I think that those are all good things. But when you're talking about sort of a forensic, financial audit of various places, I don't think that any of us should be concerned about that. It maybe whether it's worth the expense to do it or not, or worth the time and the energy that it takes away from the core functions, that's a decision that people are going to have to make. But I don't think that any of us should be scared of a forensic audit moving forward, because all of these things are intended to diagnose. We're supposed to, like when we do audits of any kind, performance audit, forensic audit, basic financial audits, they're supposed to teach us something. And then we're supposed to be able to make changes to improve as a result of the new information.
So the question I have, okay, so I appreciate the fact that you're professionalizing it. That's great. No question there. But I mean, the question that we're hearing, are there financial irregularities? That's the irregularities. Sorry, can't get that word out. In Kane Park that your department or you are aware of?
Well, there are certain things that I think that we've tried to flag and catch. So for instance, one circumstance that I know that people in the community focused on one particular aspect of this particular situation, the relationship between the city and Friends of Kane Park. Financially problematic and legally problematic.
I'm sorry, there are details to that would explain better how that picture looks, and I just don't have time tonight to discuss that. Maybe I can put Kane Park on the finance committee meeting next month, if that's okay with you.
That's fine. I'm just wanting just a clear answer of the financial issues going on that we should be aware of,
Yeah.
and that's all I want to know.
Yeah, but the complexity of the Friends of Kane Park and Cleveland Heights over the historical relationship is going to take some time to set that up, and I would just as soon give it the time it deserves. That you have that your viewpoint and Friends of Kane Park's viewpoint.
Well, no, I'm not talking about that discrepancy. I'm talking about just the sort of the legal aspects of things.
They paid
and the
actors.
financial aspect
Yeah.
of things and sort of how that is supposed to work.
Yeah.
Definitely problematic from a financial perspective, what you're talking about. And that's something that we had to adjust delicately as much as we could. But ultimately, yeah, there were some financial issues that we had to improve processes about when it comes to how money gets, used from what sources, that kind of thing. We had to fix some things.
And I'm looking for things that are egregious, like missing money, stolen money. That's the kind of stuff I'm looking for.
That I am not aware of.
Would like to move on to credit rating right now, and if you could briefly just tell us, Director Hairston, what you've told us in this report, what our rating is right now. And I also, I will ask again, do we have an established current level reserves that you would feel comfortable with us maintaining on our unencumbered balance for General Fund 101?
There are some benchmarks for how much reserve you should keep within your general fund. There are some published benchmarks. And I think that would probably be the best way to answer your question.
Okay,
So I'd like to get back to you on that
great.
with the proper metric. I did reach out to Amy Hillman at Moody's last week in regards to our credit rating. I asked her for the last 10 years of history for our credit rating. She said, Rodney, you guys have been A1 all the way up until March of 2025, where you fell into a category called no rating. And that's because they're waiting for our 2023 financials. So at this point, we have what's, no rating, which is neutral. It's not like you have bad credit or good credit. You kind of have no credit because they can't rate you because they don't have the financial information to rate you. So I told her I expected to have that information soon. I expect to have the final published 2023 report during the month of September with an opinion. At that point, I will proactively reach out to her, get her the financial information that she needs, and then at that point, they will render a credit rating for the city of Cleveland Heights.
And you'll update council on that?
Absolutely.
So,
Thank you.
so we don't need a 2024 financial statement, financial position or opinion letter? We
At
just
this
need a
point in
20
time, we need a 2023. As this year progresses and we get into the third quarter, where a lot of 2024 reports will begin to be published. I expect the city of Cleveland's CAFR to drop probably around the October-November timeframe of this year. Then that's when Moody's will be looking for that 2024 report. And I hope to have something tangible by the 12th month of this year for 2024 as well.
So if we were to hypothetically put a bond issue on the ballot for Shaker Lakes and do it somehow in conjunction with the city of Shaker, it'd be two separate issues. But if we had to raise a significant amount of money, if everybody decides that that's a good idea, we need a bond, we need to have a bond rating.
I don't think we're there yet.
I'm definitely not.
Well, we're not there yet. I mean, there's a lot of little ducks that have to
Big ducks.
go. Yeah, I
And
mean,
carp.
yeah, I mean, who knows where that's gonna go? But it basically means until we have a bond rating, we can't even consider anything
Do
like
we
that.
not have a bond rating? I mean, do you have to propose a bond before you get a bond rating?
Well, you have to figure out how much money you're gonna, it all goes into a financial calculation to figure out how much money you could raise.
What would be the estimated timeline on the bond
Would-
issuance?
I have no idea, but
Is
I
that
think,
this year
I
or-
think the earliest would be in the December, January, February, just
Okay.
knowing how the sewer district works and things.
So then by then we should have the 2024 audit, an opinion on both years, 2023 and 2024.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. After we provide the audited statements, will they be able to go back and change the rating from no rating to something for 2025? Or is it the case that we missed like a review period for the year? We're gonna have to wait for them to provide one for 2026.
I think the best answer for that is I would have to reach out to Moody's to get the correct answer. And I can do that and get back to you.
Thank you.
I can add a little bit. It's not exactly tied to a year. Like we're not it's not a yearly grade necessarily. Once we get to the point where we're, complete with that, we can request the rating, whether or not we're going out for debt. And so when we're ready to do that, we can go back to Moody's and say, hey, rate us now. And then that will be our rating until the next rating. And just for a bit of a history lesson, you went back 10 years and you saw A1 all the way down. And if you had gone 1 year more, you would have noted that, and I obviously I got this particular thing. This was back when I was first on council. The very next month after I was appointed to the council, we received a Moody's downgrade. So before this 2015 A1 rating, we were at AA2, and we got downgraded in 2015. I've got the report here, the rating update and this downgrade. I suppose I can forward this to people if you're interested in what led to that downgrade in 2015. Just as sort of a history lesson and also a bit of context for what we might want, what we might expect moving forward. So I'll send this out.
Okay, can you briefly talk about the open positions report that we requested,
Sure.
please?
So I created my own open positions report. I found the information in New World unreliable. Sometimes, and this is an area of an improvement, this is an opportunity for improvement in our human resources department, but just yesterday I got an email. It says, good afternoon, Jessica Shantz and Patrick Costigan are still listed as active employees in New World. Please terminate them. So the information needs to be better managed in terms of when employees come and go, and that affects the open positions report in New World. So I created my own open positions report. I meet with each one of the directors and chiefs and ask them, how many people do you have working for you and how many openings do you have? And I think that produces a higher quality report. So I did this report, I believe on the 11th of the month of August, showing 377 full-time employees with 29 openings for full-time positions. Then below, I have some statistics here for July and August, where we show our 4 classifications of employees: permanent full-time, permanent part-time, temporary full-time, and temporary part-time. So in July, we're at 638, and in August, that dropped down to 617.
Seasonal employment in there.
Yes, seasonal employment is in there.
Any questions? Go ahead.
So, I shared with everybody, I think on July 15th regarding the opens report. I just counted all the positions we had in our 2025 budget, and it's 436 positions based on the budget. So there's a discrepancy. If you do your math, it looks like we have 406. If you just count your open positions plus your current, 329 plus 377 is 406. So that's a differential of 30 positions that were budgeted for that are not included in this report. And another 29 positions that are technically open. Now, I guess technically, with these additional 30 people that we decided to fund, I guess the director could bring them on in December, and it would never show up in this report. I guess I'm saying is, going back to when we started, I'm trying to justify some of our extra budget expenses based on the open positions we have. And is it based on the open positions you have, 29, or is it based on the budget amount of the 436?
I think.
And maybe this is not, maybe you need to get back to us on an answer on that.
Okay. Yeah, I think some of these some of these information sources have maybe decided not to hire or changed their minds about hiring. But I can see where there is about 30 positions missing, so maybe the open positions should be closer to 59 instead of 29.
So you take a closer look at that for us?
Yes.
All right.
And just for a little bit of administrative context, when we do a budget, it's a projection, it's an estimate, it's a expectation. And what is it, everybody's got a plan in the boxing ring until you get punched in the face, right? And then all of that maybe goes out the window. Not all of it, hopefully, you still got your plan, but budgets, at least the way that we've done them, and council clearly can decide that it wants to be a whole hell of a lot more granular if it wants to. I wouldn't suggest it, but there is a reason why the appropriations ordinance doesn't list individual positions or numbers of positions. And that's to provide flexibility to the administration to accomplish the goals in the ways that an administration should have the flexibility to do. And that includes, hiring, determining that, this particular position that we thought we wanted, now we realize that we actually have an operational need for this position, not this one. And if we can make that fit within the budget, or if we can ask council for additional budget and council says yes for that purpose, then, it works. And that requires that administrative flexibility that I wouldn't want to deny the directors, but it is something that any organization could decide to be a lot more restrictive in terms of flexibility on that. Like I said, I wouldn't advise it. But that's one of the reasons why you'll see we might have an idea of the staffing levels in any particular department, and then maybe Public Works figures out it doesn't need that particular climber because we got, some other efficiency going on, or somebody was cross-trained or something like that. And then that can be repurposed to somebody assisting with vehicle maintenance instead.
But that's okay. Okay, but let's say it's $100,000 a year employee. I picked that number because it's an easy round number. And they're gonna add one of those people in Public Works, maybe a very senior person. So you're adding $100,000 plus all the expense load for that employee into the budget. So sitting in the budget, it's money, and if it's not gonna be used, or maybe it's gonna be used for two positions, maybe at half that salary, that's fine. I mean, operationally, that's in your woods, not our woods, but when it comes to finances, if that position is not open, but not used, it's extra money that we can use to kind of fill the budget shortfall if we're trying to find some money to do things.
I wholeheartedly agree with you, and I think that this isn't something that I wanted to try and fail to impose on departments, but I have long thought that there was a problem with how we keep positions open, even when we are. Oh, that's over in the communications conference room. So if you go right back around that way, there should be an open door over there by the stairs.
On the same floor?
Yep.
Okay.
So I've long had a problem with how we keep positions open and open in the system as though we are going to fill them, and then they show up in an open position report, but we're not actually going to fill those positions. And people keep them open for a variety of reasons. Sometimes it's budget games that people play, departments want to keep that position open because they know that it goes to their budget in the next budget cycle. But I think that is exactly a place where we need to make some improvements, as in more regularly determining what our staffing levels should be based on our experience during the year, and then closing out positions we're not going to fill. Like actually do that. There's another thing that we haven't really done a great job with over the years is adjusting our revenues in the budget. over the year. When we get new revenue in that we weren't anticipating, we're not necessarily adjusting our revenue budget. And that's something that we need to do, I think, more proactively and regularly throughout the year as well. Just to have a more accurate picture, especially now in this new modern context where there's a lot more scrutiny over the exact numbers.
Councilor Petrus, can you make it really brief, because I need to get to report from Vice Chair Maddox, but at 7:15.
Yep.
So, because he's got a hard stop at 7:30, so I'm really under a grind here.
Promise it'll be short.
Okay.
Positions vary, so one could pay 40,000, another could pay 100,000.
Right.
What was very helpful for me was earlier in the year, the mayor, Mr. Phelps, ran a report showing, I think it was in March, showing that last year, for example, we avoided $9 million worth of personnel expenses. Is it possible to run that report for this point in time so that we can see, assuming, like a equal distribution across the year of the expenses, just to see where we are tracking against that? Because again, to your point, two positions, that are each paying 50,000 are counted the same in this report as a position that's paying 100,000. So getting that amount that we're avoiding could be helpful to understand the context and the scale.
Okay.
Would that be maybe a budget performance report with salaries, just
Yes.
salaries?
Thank you.
With healthcare too.
You wanna put in the roll-ups too?
It's just another fun, if you can just ballpark, maybe it's a 20% add or 30% or whatever it is.
Just ballpark is fine.
Yeah.
Chairperson, I have to, thank you.
Thank you for staying for a while, appreciate it. Okay, I'm gonna move on to the ADP conversion, and once again, I wanna acknowledge the work that you put into getting this packet to me this evening. If you can just, in a couple of minutes, synopsis of where you're at with the conversion, I would really appreciate it, because I know we got that email, please, sign on to the new portal several months ago, and I'm just personally and for everybody on staff, I'd like to know where we're at.
So this process, it is moving along. I'll just say good evening. Everyone's privileged to be here, honored to work with the team and to serve the residents of Cleveland Heights. Per the memo, we are in the process of implementing a new payroll and timekeeping system to evolve into a more comprehensive platform. We discussed a lot this evening about different systems. So Ryan, our IT director, will maybe speak a little bit more to it.
Sure, yes, I'll try to keep it brief. We've had some.
Can you come here, because I think the microphone's not gonna pick you up. I think that's been one of the problems.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me up. So this ADP conversion, we've been working on it for quite some time now. We tried to tie it together with standing up a new timekeeping solution in iSolved. And we've hit some challenges in standing up these two systems because both of these vendors are payroll companies, as is New World. And as is evident in this meeting, we have challenges with the New World software as well. So it's moving along, but we may want to take a holistic view of New World, iSolved, ADP, the software, and be kind of nimble in our critical thinking about this project and going live with it. The go live date has been kicked back a few times for different reasons, but we're working at it and we're making progress. But I also just want to leave that door open to taking a holistic approach, especially if we look at replacing our ERP system. Maybe we need to tie that together with this, tie those conversations together.
Is the timekeeping system going to be, is it centrally located like at each cost center, or will employees have access to it on their computers? So how?
There's 9 time clocks installed throughout the city,
Okay,
and you can also access the system from your city computer.
okay, that's what I'm familiar with. Any questions, anybody? This is a big project, and thank you for doing the work. It's challenging, I'm sure, when you've got incompatible software package, right?
Correct, yes.
So will you keep us up to date?
Absolutely.
I would really appreciate that, and then, and maybe let the employees know as it gets closer, to anticipate. I'm sure you're gonna be doing a beta test or a parallel run at some point.
As we have, yeah.
Okay.
Madam Chair, I'd like to, I think lots of people like this, what I'm about to say. This is an example of one of my failures in doing some of this. One of the reasons why we're having a difficult time with this is because in trying to fix one problem, when I took this job, I realized like we're keeping time in all different ways throughout the organization. Some people are writing stuff down. We're sending Excel spreadsheets to people. It wasn't uniform. It wasn't tracked very well, I would say, and not consistently. And that was problematic, and it wasn't in line with what my experience had been, which is a central system where everybody can input their time. Either you're on a job site and you're hitting the clock, or you're putting your time in the system. And so one of my immediate thoughts was, we need to fix this. We can't be writing down, hours worked on a piece of paper and giving it to our supervisor. That doesn't make any sense. And so I asked for us to research and then implement a new timekeeping system. Parallel to that, there was a determination that I didn't connect with the timekeeping issue for the payroll, a new payroll system and implementing a new payroll system, when those conversations should have been had together. And if we had gone through sort of a step-by-step process about all of the functionality that we needed to improve, we would have incorporated that sooner together instead of doing these two parallel track software implementations and then trying to marry them when they're not really as compatible as if we had just gone with one holistic system. And so I'm hoping that that's the direction that the city's headed now. But part of the delay is due to that sort of disjointed conversation about two related things that should have been one conversation.
Any questions, anybody? Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
This is really going to bring us to the 22nd century. Just briefly, the question's been raised about when the Archer report reflected pay increases will be seen by non-union staff and directors. Will that be transitioned as they have their annual reviews, or do you see that coming in fairly quickly?
So and I know that there's a lot of, incorrect information out there about whether or not people have seen salary increases so far. People have, and these have been
Great.
rolled out, and and keeping in mind pay compression, equity issues. It's not the least complicated thing. It's not the most complicated thing either. But we have been rolling these out for the non-union employees as well, in anticipation, again, of the union increases as well. Yeah. And so that's something that we have been steadily working toward, and people have gotten increases since we made that change. But we're still working through that, and the retroactive COLA, I think we are close to the complete list. I think I'll be finalizing that this week. Right, and then moving forward with that. But then all of the people who were below the minimum, we have the list of that too.
Yep.
And so that'll be taken care of as well. But we've been steadily pushing out these increases based on the Archer study since then.
And the next 4 pay periods, we will complete these. So we've got the COLA, we've got the retro COLA, and then we've got adjustments, and then we've got retro adjustments to 513 when the legislation passed. So we've got a schedule and we're working through it.
So would you say that loudly, please, so people can hear what you just said? I think that's really important information for our
So
employees.
on 8/22, we're doing a 3% cost of living increase for our non-bargaining employees. On 9/5, we're gonna do a retro to April 1st for our non-bargaining employees. On 9/19, we're gonna be adjusting salaries per the salary study, the Archer study. And then on 10/3, we'll be retroing those employees that we adjust back to 5/13 when the legislation passed.
Okay, everybody okay with that?
Quick question then. So in your projections for year end, please try and give us some rough estimate as to the impact on the budget. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I'm gonna move on to,
Before you
go
do
ahead.
that, I was gonna ask, I wanna honor their time while they're here. Line 10, I actually had some questions about our discussion for the finance department. Is that okay?
Yeah, go ahead.
The reason I wanted to move up the council grant policy development, and I actually held this question when we were talking about the financials earlier. I was thinking about the decision that we made yesterday, in terms of how we funded Prentice,
Right.
some of the other requests that are coming in, and some of our current asks. And I realized, and I'm sure the public does too, that 10 requests from organizations like Prentice takes us right back to another $2 million. And so as we're talking about creating policies around this grant development, I'm curious about what do you need from council? What should council be looking at? Is this something that we need to strategically really budget out and say, this is it? I'm of an opinion that if we're going to continue to do this, we need to really target what areas we're trying to impact. But from a financial standpoint, as these requests are coming in for council, if we don't organize this, I know now you're forced to go back into that budget and take a look every time someone has a request for $100,000 or $200,000 or $300,000. And so we're asking you to do some modeling and some forecasting. But I'm positive that as we're doing that, it's also kind of making it a little bit more difficult. And as I was looking at the numbers, I recognize that no city can continue to just do that over and over and over again. There has to be some type of tight budget for that. And so I was just curious about a couple of things I think I'm getting to is, number one, have you seen cities deal with this in any way, shape, or form, or what type of systems they might have had? And number two, when council gets these requests and we're doing these and we're working through this process, how does it impact how you're looking in terms of the forecasting going forward for the future? Because you're not seeing another $200,000 request or another $300,000 request, so they're just coming through sometimes. And so as you're thinking about the future, is it really negatively impacting you to just have to deal with these requests as they're coming in? Or would it be helpful to have a strategic set amount of money at the beginning of that year that you know you're working through? Sorry about all of that, but I don't want you guys here all night, but I didn't want to have the conversation without you.
I think in a perfect world, we would have a contingency fund where, every budget cycle, we would, put in, 10 million or 3 million for things that come up. But it is my understanding, from a former supervisor, that there is a language in the Ohio Revised Code that government entities can't have a slush fund, can't have a contingency fund. So that kind of puts you in a difficult spot where you want to have some type of a discretionary fund, but can you?
I was coming to that because everyone that I've spoken to about this from other municipalities said it's completely impossible to do that way. It's not even a door that you want to open because, again, we're not a nonprofit organization anyway. And so as we were discussing as a council, I didn't want to do that outside of the finance department to make sure that we're really grounded in reality about what we should do, what we can do, and really going forward. Because although these are some great requests, I know we can't continue to do this. We just can't. It's just not something we can continue to fill in that gap. So I know finding public-private partnerships is going to be critical. But at the same time, I was uncomfortable with council having this policy development conversation without at least the public hearing that directly from you. So I appreciate you saying that we've got to be really cautious about how we would go about that. And so my question to council is this even something that we want to continue to approach this way? We've got these small requests for our partnerships and nonprofits that help with our school programming and things like that. But now you're going from $5,000 to $10,000 to now $200,000 requests. And the reason I'm bringing that up now is because I don't know if my council colleagues know it, but there are several nonprofits right now intentionally getting ready to ask us for everything from $300,000 to $450,000 because of what we've been doing. And I think there's a lot of folks that are still operating in this ARPA mindset, that this money is just there, that we can just keep doling out. And so while you were here, I just didn't want to have this conversation after item 9 and you're not here for this, because I think it's important that, number one, the residents understand it, but number two, that we really come up with some type of strategy while you're here to talk about what this looks like in the future. Because every time we do this, it's obviously going to impact some other service we cannot provide in the city that we are absolutely responsible for. So I just didn't want to leave you out of that conversation.
We could also be looking at caps, could we not?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Within the structure of the policy that we decide to implement if we do.
Yeah.
So that people know that the sky is not,
right.
the sky's not the limit.
Well, I with a little experience here, both CAC, council, this experience, and then work at the county as well, and at the city too, city of Cleveland, way back in the day. There is a reason why the city of Cleveland has ward allocations. I don't know if they've gotten rid of those.
They still
They're
have,
talking about it.
yeah,
but-
they're talking about it right now.
I think ward allocations are a bad idea generally because of the dangers, but I understand why they exist, and that is because I think inherent in the position of a council member or a legislator generally, whether it's state house, federal, or municipal, inherent in the position is this urge. If you don't have it intrinsically, it's probably developed in you through your interaction with the community to want to provide that kind of support to these things. And people are going to be asking. And this is it's not a popularity contest exactly, but it doesn't hurt to be popular to win re-election, and giving people money is always something that makes people happy. Well, you would think. But that's why ward allocations exist. I think that that's something to be avoided, but I understand the rationale behind it to sort of whet that appetite or to sate that appetite a little bit. I think that one of the things that I saw Shaker doing when I was taking a look at how different communities budget is at the end of every year, they take a look at the savings that they've achieved throughout that year, and then they take that money and they put it toward, I think for them, they use it toward economic development work. And they've set it aside for economic development work, but that's taking some portion of savings achieved through, the previous year and then allocating that amount to the next year's sort of philanthropic work that the council does, could be a way to keep things bounded and keep things in proportion to the expenditures and the savings that you're achieving as an organization as well.
I'm glad you brought that up because this is actually segueing into the topic I wanted to bring up. And there's some information that I know I gave out about the programming, but this brought me back up to a conversation that you had with us. This might have been at the beginning of this year, last year, in terms of how we go about even our CDBG funds.
Yes.
And this goes back to the conversation I wanted to have with council, even with this presentation for underserved neighborhoods, is I think we've got to have a broader look about targeting those funds to impact certain things versus trying to pepper that out everywhere. And even dealing with this, I think we got to ask ourselves, is this something that we want to invest in? Because I have at least 8 or 9 different things that we could do to impact this work, but it would require, in terms of having that type of impact, that we really target it through other activities as well. And so by that mean, just to explain this for the public, it wouldn't mean simply just creating a program and dropping a pot of money into that. It would mean making sure that a lot of our programming is all focused on this central goal, from how do we handle our CDBG funds to even outside agencies that we're supporting towards that same goal. And so as I was looking at this programming and looking at the nature of the federal government and some of the funding that's rolling back for this program, this is all in the back of my mind, is that this program is no different really than the outside requests that we're getting, because we're talking about putting that money into a very targeted, focused program and hoping that we get this return. But at the same time, if you look over at the CDBG funding and how we go about that, it doesn't really speak to us trying to really target any specific issue. And I know that some cities, like the mayor said, have been more successful because they have tied that to a much broader vision versus just making everything important every single year. And I think we're at a point where we need to have that conversation with this. And so I have some information to share, but that's why I wanted you here at the table, because I think we really need to ask ourselves, what are we trying to impact? What area do we really want to target, whether it's for this year or 2 or 3 years out, and focus our programming, our budgeting and things on that, our outside public and private partnerships on that, so that we can say that's a number we wanted to hit and we hit it, and this is how we did it, versus saying this is another program that we think is worthy, let's allocate more money to this, meanwhile we're still doing everything else. I think in a nonprofit world we call it mission creep. You just can't do everything for everybody. And so I think just as a finance department, as a body, and then just as in terms of our leadership, we need to ask ourselves, are we gonna target something? Or is there 2 or 3 things we wanna try to hit? Or will we continue to try to fund these programs this way? And I didn't want to take this idea and what I'm working on and put it over here because it came from council. I think that this still needs to be included in a much broader vision for how we'll spend those funds. And I just think it goes back to that.
It goes like in Shaker, they have sort of a more collaborative approach, I think, between their administration and their council for a variety of reasons, not the least of which is history. But we're young. But so they get together, and you're probably aware of this. They get together and they sort of collectively determine certain priorities that they'll be working on, and that can be a way to sort of incorporate all of the perspectives. But I think the danger that approach will run into is relationships. Because so many of these decisions are made or seem to be made based on the relationship of the person asking with the with the person who is empowered to make the ask of the body. And so when you start to interfere with that, you might run into some pushback. Probably not outward pushback, but I wish you all luck.
I think it ties very nicely to talking about council's goals at the beginning of the year. And this program could be part of that discussion. I'm just gonna give you each a sample. It's an application that Up Neighbors has for you to look at for next time. Yeah, I don't want to talk about it this evening, but if we finally tune what our policy is and our guiding mission, I don't want to do everybody every year. That to me is overwhelming.
Absolutely.
And there's some fabulous groups out there that we probably don't even know about yet.
Yeah.
That we could make, by how we define our mission, which could come from each one of us as we talk to our constituents. What's going on? What could you use? Some
You're
support
bringing
on.
new folks to the table to target them maybe
Yeah.
for that year. And what the mayor said is absolutely right, because it's already happening in a city who's trying to do that. The idea of it caused some nonprofits who have been funded every year to come in and say, what do you mean not this year? Because it's gonna require closing that door at least for a year to say, we're gonna target this funding towards this topic. And that's one of the reasons I know that we were talking about underserved neighborhoods and we went back to minority financing here. But it's one of the reasons I want to bring that up today is because as I'm discussing this, and I told you I'm headed to a conference in a couple of weeks to talk about this, is you're no longer just seeing this DEI focus in terms of home ownership and financing right now because it's just not safe.
Right.
And then in Cleveland Heights, I'm thinking do we really want to go that route anyway? Because our goal, I think if we do a target, we can really change some things. And so just to give you an example of why I'm thinking that the council needs to go this route is, and I'm not saying this is what we should target, but if we did do an example, we're saying housing is it. So everything that we target is going to impact housing or home ownership in some way. Well, now we're looking at what we have and think with different eyes. So for example, when I go to other cities, for instance, Baltimore, they're not operating in a silo. So their CDC has homes in some cases that they're dispersing to other cities, or their city has homes that they're dispersing to other CDCs and nonprofits. Those nonprofits are working through the city because many of the people they're buying those homes from are on the other side of programming in the same city, going through financial literacy programs and financing programs. And so these CDCs aren't looking for people to purchase the homes, they're renovating them for residents who are going through the programming for the city on the other side. So I'm thinking in terms of a holistic approach, we've got to partner with Future Heights, with our start rights and say, you've got these homes, they may be difficult to buy, but what if we have this pool of people? We've prepared, we've got them approved, they've gone through our programming, either through our financial institution or nonprofit, and we're giving them to you. So how many homes can we then remodel and rehab in our own community and give those same people the opportunity to live here in the community? So I'm thinking about our housing stock, how we can use that existing housing stock and create programming that will take our residents who are already here into those homes. And then in addition, we've got our home repair programs. So now I'm in that program and maybe I see this house that is only worth $5,000, but I'm willing to do that work if you help me get a grant. I've gone through that financial literacy program and now I put in that sweat equity into this home and I own it in that neighborhood. I think the city has an ability to guide this without putting all of that money into it and make that happen. If we just look at our existing inventory, existing programming, and then work with our nonprofits to kind of funnel that work. I don't think we should be asking ourselves, how do we create home ownership programs and financial literacy programs, but ignore our housing stock that's right here that someone could literally go through. I mean, imagine if StartRight or Future Heights had a home now, and they're touring people through that home to say, this is going to belong to one of you. If you can complete this program, we have banks committed to that. That's a different type of thing to offer your residents than to say, we're hoping anyone comes. We have people right here. I think we can put through those programs. And so I would like to see a resident go through that program and take one of those foreclosures or one of those rehabs and then turn that neighborhood around. And I think if we target our funding that way, we'll get more bang for our buck. And so that's what I'm starting to see across the community. And I'm hoping that as we talk about our goals, we can see that here. And so my question was, if we do something like this, what's the number? What exactly is our end goal for what we want to target for that year? Because then unfortunately, Apprentice might not get funded. But maybe we're funding a financial literacy program that's taking 50 of our residents that couldn't afford to buy a home before, and now they're in home ownership. So that's 50 homes now that are back in the place of our residents. So that's how I'm thinking about it. And I don't know how far away we are from that, but I think there are models across the country that show if we keep just funding separate programs, I don't think we'll have the impact that we would. And I don't know from a finance standpoint if you see that any differently, but I'm thinking if all of our programs are funding the same type of impact, we'll have a better bang. So
I would also like to add that if we're talking about doing a community-wide reach out to let people know that programs exist, there's a program called that Benjamin Rose runs.
yes, that's the top of the list. Yeah.
Home buyer education. They also have the Cleveland Housing Network.
Yeah.
Has prospective homeowners education. So they're already established programs, so we don't have to recreate that wheel.
Yep. And so imagine you have those financial institutions and nonprofits who struggle sometimes to get people in those programs.
They do.
But now
Yeah.
we've got a site with links to homes that StartRight and Future Heights, and Cleveland Heights is partnering with people and to say this can happen if you do this 6 months or this year program. We'll work with you and you follow those guidelines. This is your home. And I think if the city can connect people to those homes, I don't think it'll cost us as much, and we'll definitely see the return that we want. But I think we haven't connected all of our programming to a
Right.
central goal.
We don't wanna
And I
be
think-
siloed.
Yep, and I think that's where we are. If it's housing, it's housing. If it's safety, it's safety. If it's youth programming, it's youth programming. But I think we need to target something at least every year, every two, to say this is what we're gonna focus on for all of our funding. And it is absolutely gonna cause a fire for everyone else in the city. So I think we have to be very clear about what that goal is we're trying to hit and have some solid numbers. And that's what I have to say.
This meeting that you're going to, can you report back to us when
Yes.
you get done?
They're
Went through it?
And there's two things that I want to get from that, because there's some cities that have already made this adjustment. So I want to see some actual cities that have done this and what
Yeah.
it looks like. But I also want to see what the new funding plan is, because there are cities that have pulled back and nonprofit CDCs, because none of the grants are written anywhere near like they were when
Yeah.
they started. I lost a grant. We lost $75,000 at our church for a CDC grant that we were going after, just because it was completely about DEI in the city of East Cleveland. And they just pulled the funding for us. So you're finding things like that all across the country. So it's how do we model this to make sure, and I think Cleveland Heights is in a good spot anyway, because do we just want to model that for minorities? Or are we saying let's open something up for all of our residents to really own a home? And so I'm looking at that both ways.
The grand picture.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you wanted to tell us this evening?
No, I would like for council or finance though, I think we're at a place where we really need to have a meeting to talk about what that focus would be, not just council goals overall, but what that looks like in terms of the CDBG and how we fund it, our budgeting and everything. And I think it'll take some time, but I think we're at that stage, and then bringing finance in to talk about what that system might look like and how other cities are doing it. But I think if we're gonna do something like this, it is going to impact some large, long-term relationships with some of our nonprofits that are used to being funded. So I think if we're gonna do this, we have to have a clear explanation for what targets we're trying to hit and then hit those targets. Because they're gonna have to find that funding other ways if we do this.
And word of mouth also,
Mhm.
and we start building a network of education for potential home buyers.
Absolutely.
That will get around and these programs will get more use as that from that as well.
And I think that having the housing stock here and advertising that as an incentive is something I don't think a lot of cities have done.
Mhm.
But I think being able to show people that there's a little house right around the corner from you that you can have and move your family in.
Affordable.
Yep, it incentivizes them to go in that program and stay in that program and do the work. I remember we bought our first home. One of the things that continued to stay in my face, my wife couldn't stand it, she was scared to death, kept driving by the house. Just reminding myself what we were working for to make sure that that goal was secure. And I think having something tangible that our residents can see that we've done these homes, and all they have to do is go through this programming and follow these guidelines with the bank. I think I'd rather us go to ribbon cuttings for our own residents getting into these homes from these programs than anything else.
Well, and debt to income ratio and the credit rating, all that stuff comes out in these classes, so people can start to work on it 6 months out from looking at that potential Start Right or Future Heights home. So
Absolutely. And I think that if we do it right, these homes will be affordable enough that we can really put someone in it without
Yeah.
this thing being a burden for them. So, but
we
thanks.
could be at the ribbon cutting.
Absolutely. Everyone.
Anybody else have anything? Thank you very much. I'm glad this was because of the Racial Justice Task Force. And it will continue to be based on their recommendation that we continue this program, so I'll make sure I bring it up on our next agenda as well. And if you have anything you wanna share with us, maybe at a council meeting or something that was particularly relevant that maybe we need to be considering when we do budget and stuff.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you everyone for being here this evening. Mr. Chilco back there. Appreciate you very much. And as it said, I'm sorry, I'm 6 minutes past your hard close, but it's 7:36 PM and this meeting is adjourned.